What does it take to make workshops work? And how can we facilitate collaboration that sticks and leads to results? My name is Miriam Havnas, and with the Workshops Work podcast, I'm on the mission to find the magic ingredients that make workshops work. Today with me on the show is Karen Schmidt, and we speak about how to break management routines and the role of language. So stay tuned. And by the way, if you don't have pen and paper at hand to take your own notes, scroll down to the show notes to find the link to download my free one-page summary. And now, enjoy the show. Hello, Karen. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Miriam. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Yes, and we're just joking that it's so funny that two German-speaking facilitators are having a conversation in English.
Yes.
Because I believe in it so much that I think a wider audience should have access to your brain and your expertise.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And let's start with the beginning. When did you start calling yourself a facilitator?
Actually, I started calling myself a facilitator around 10 years ago. And just recently, I observed myself to use it less and less. So I do facilitate workshops, but I rather call myself a consultant who is also facilitating.
What made the shift?
I think there is, especially in Germany, a lot of misunderstanding around the word facilitation. So it's not so easy to understand what it is. And I don't want to explain this so much. So I just do workshops with people and we create cool stuff.
And then you call it consulting instead of facilitation just to...
Yeah, because lots of the work is done before the workshop. And that's the consulting part. Mm-hmm. And so I think the value is in the whole process. And many people understand by facilitation more really facilitating a workshop. And I think that's just a part of it.
Interesting. And what got you into facilitation in the first place?
That's a little bit a longer story. I hope that's okay. So I had a traditional management career, actually. I started in 2000 and worked as a consultant in a management consulting and software company. Worked in various projects and ended up in a management team to internationalize the company. So I built up the public sector business of this company successfully in 3 years. We did crazy projects all around Europe with public organizations and institutions. And once my mission was completed, I was working there for 9 years. And I said, guys, all the men around me in the management team, the world is colorful and a management career as a lonely woman just between men does not make me happy for the rest of my life. And so I discovered the colorful world around, and also with the question, what is in transformation if a project is delivered successfully? So I went into change facilitation a little bit and did the Scrum Master, the design thinking, and applied improv and story work and service design, learning in communities of practice, but also working with people I could look over the shoulder and learn from. Mm. And yeah, facilitation was an important part of all of this, actually. So wonderful. This is how I came there.
Thank you for sharing the story. I think it's very inspiring also for the audience to hear the vitas of all the different facilitators, because none of us, or very, very few of us, actually graduated from uni or from high school thinking, oh, I want to be a facilitator. And your company name is called Over the Fence.
Yes.
What is the story behind Over the Fence?
Actually, it's not. It's the name, yes, but it's not a company. It's an open innovation community. Mm-hmm. We started in 2013. Yeah, and the story is a little bit like I did all this different stuff. And together with Frank, who also was a manager before. Like we have been working together before. Also, he switched to university and started teaching as a business professor. And I told him all my new discoveries from all the different fields. And he was very inspired and said, couldn't we make all this fancy stuff, which is really cool, which we had never heard before when we have been working in this traditional management consulting company, and make this available for people and projects? And this is kind of over the fence because it's connecting different disciplines. And we also always wanted to connect perspectives of people from different disciplines. They speak different languages, they have different understandings if they hear a word, and so on. And this over the fence kind of, I don't know where it popped up actually, but we found so many connections to that metaphor. Also over the fence, from creating a vision to getting it done, actually. So we started playing around, and especially we started with projects. For projects are an over-the-fence garden party. All people come from the different disciplines, from the different gardens. And in a project, you need to bring them all together in order to have a great time together and produce a great result.
So what do you think can traditional project managers learn from facilitators?
A lot. So we started with actually creating visuals, like a project canvas, which uses a different language than project managers do. And we have realized that in projects, if you're lucky, the project manager is an expert in project management. But project management often comes with a very complicated language. And we started inventing our tools actually for people from outside the project management domain. But then the project managers, like the certified project managers, discovered it as a tool for communication. So often project managers sit alone and create plans and stuff, but the communication part is so essential. And this is the invitation. And we created like some guidelines for workshops. We have published them in our books for project design and for the project canvas, to invite project managers to apply some techniques of facilitation in their work when they create a shared understanding of their project or specific aspects within the team.
So what is the mind shift? Because I guess that language is only one part. So to communicate in a way that other people actually understand it. But then there's also, I guess, a mind shift. And what makes me think that is when I think of project management, I think of waterfall. When I think of facilitation, I think of agile. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm now also again in these vocabulary traps.
Yeah, exactly. It's different dimensions, I think. Mm-hmm. So you can have a good project manager who can facilitate great workshops with their team, no matter which procedural model you build your project on. Like for me, waterfall or agile in a project is just two ways of designing the procedure of the project. Mm-hmm. It's where it comes from. But you can have great conversations, great team, great communication in any type of project. Mm. So for us, maybe when I say project, I mean like a venture where you bring people together who usually do not work together in order to create something out of the ordinary. Mm. So this is where project management was made for. Mm. And many people confuse that with line management or just general management. It's really, the project has a beginning and end and needs to create a result for someone so that they can use it and a change happens. So you wouldn't make a project if you don't want to change anything. So I have this very general understanding of project. We call everything project, or like many things project. Not all of them need project management. Mm. They need to have a certain complexity and so on.
And by complexity, you mean the different stakeholders, the different departments, the different ideas that need to be involved and connected?
Yes. And also often it's kind of a novel adventure for the people involved. So it's not their usually job. They don't have an agenda or a procedure how to get to the result. They need to invent it on their way.
And what do you think do most people get wrong then about projects and the process of managing them or collaborating with them, bringing them to a successful?
Well, exactly that project. So you mean projects, right? Not project management, because it goes in different directions. I think what most people get wrong about projects, well, what the project is about. Like we were thinking, so if we could change just one thing about how people think about projects, he said, imagine they would all start with a shared understanding of the project. They would actually all do the same project, especially because they come from different disciplines, and you have a project brief or so, and everyone is reading it, and they all have a different picture in their mind what this project is about. And for really having a great team productively working on a project, it makes so much sense that they have the same understanding of it, at least at the starting point, and also in different points of time afterwards. They don't always have the same understanding of a project. It's not possible. But to start to think of the procedure and how to collaborate, who are the stakeholders, and so on, it's helpful.
This is then where the mindset of facilitation comes in, right? Because I think the understanding that we first have to come around and meet around a shared purpose, that everyone needs a role, a clearly defined role, and then we need to agree on the process, which is then maybe called management, but could be called facilitation.
You need facilitation in order to create that shared understanding about all the different aspects and issues. Yes, it's a merge between facilitation and management or project management know-how, actually.
Yeah. And in our exploration call, we also circled around the concept of breaking management routines.
Yes.
Yes. So what do you mean by that?
It has to do with language, like management language, for example, or project management language. It doesn't matter. So, as you said, like agile or waterfall, there are so many terms around which create a barrier for people to just think for themselves, because there is a professional language used which not everyone speaks. And that was our motivation to create, for example, a project canvas, a poster where you have all the different aspects that need to be clarified at the start of a bigger project on one page and in natural language. It's meant to be inclusive, natural language. So we are kind of proud that it's used in schools and for multi-million euro projects as well. So it developed over time. It was open source, and we learned a lot from the people using it and also applying it ourselves. But it's really this connecting people around specific questions that are relevant for their work.
And what do you think makes it so difficult for, air quotes, project managers to actually empathize with those involved in the projects and to speak their language? Because I have two hypotheses. Maybe they're a little bit provocative, but I would be curious to hear your thoughts. One is there's so many project management certifications that by using this lingo, you differentiate yourself and you can show, oh, I'm an expert because I know how to use the language that nobody understands. Similar to, we have this, I think, amongst especially German academics a lot. I studied so hard to understand this topic. Why should I write a textbook that a student understands immediately? So kind of a hybris, maybe.
Well, I'm kind of a radical constructivist by heart or by study, because my study was about learning, actually. And I'm convinced that we all develop those professional languages if we want it or not. And there is a specific language around if facilitators meet. Language that may surprise top managers. And it's a specific language around when project managers meet and learn. That's also how you, this language is shaping, and you don't realize, but once you're in this bubble, you don't realize how strange your language is for others. Mm-hmm. I think that's just what happens, and it's natural. And you also often don't realize that this is hard to understand for others, because for you it's just so normal.
You grew into it and then you forget until someone shakes you up and reminds you.
I have an example. We actually had a training in India with people at the ministry. It was for applying or developing a new visa system. And there we said, okay, what's the value for a visa for the citizens? Values, citizens, just writing it on the board. And they all looked at us puzzled. What's the value? So we were thinking they can travel and stuff. And then one of the guys stood up, very smart guys, they all studied abroad in the US or UK, said, no. The value of the visa is 30 days or 90 days. And we created an exercise out of that. So when we approach a group of people, like interdisciplinary groups, we just ask people, okay, we will tell you a word in a minute or in a second, and you just write what you associate with that. And it's like sky, and then you say blue and stuff like this. Mm-hmm. And then we say, okay, what's for you a value? And we ask these questions to many, many people, and the answers come from 3 different areas. So we could cluster it. One is around life. Mm-hmm. It's freedom, it's success, it's love,
it's a value. Values.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Then the other thing is around business, profit, turnover, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And the third one is the technical thing. Yeah, it's a number. Yeah. Value is a number. It's an entry in the database. And the interesting thing is Frank did that longer with students at the university. This is how we play management work with learning and experiments. He did this experiments with students for years. And when they start, like young students, most of them answer in the area of life values. Mm-hmm. And then it separates. He has business students and IT students. Mm-hmm. And the business students over time get more and more to this business area. And same for the IT students, they get more to the technical area. And if you ask managers, business from the business or IT people, then you have really a different language, like shown by this. And that was our trigger point to go there and to stay there and to help people understand each other.
Thank you so much for this example and the reminder.
I was part of the Art of Hosting community. I love it. And I know that the language that is used there, I could never use with my clients. Mm. Hosting, what does it have to do with food?
And although it's very similar,
yes, I know.
Yes, it maybe not literally with food, but yes, it has a lot to do with how we host around food. True, we can
actually it's even easier to understand than facilitation. Be a good host for the people.
Yeah, that's very true. And I actually, even thinking back to when I started with a podcast, I remember very well the first times that I heard all these lingo, like creating a container for participants, safe space, hosting, all these words that now come very natural to me. Yes, hasn't been so long. So thanks for the reminder. I think it's, as you say, very quickly, we then forget that others either don't understand us or understand something different by what we are saying.
Exactly. You can play this value exercise with, also very interesting is performance. Mm-hmm. Ask an artist, ask a guy with a fast car, yes, or business people what performance means, and the same with facilitation. I often had this, what, facility management?
Yes.
Because this word is not part of the natural language of people, then you need to explain it.
And then it becomes
that I look for words they can understand.
Very true. And this is actually the reason why I started the podcast in the first place. I started introducing myself as a facilitator. And in Europe, people were like, what? Are you a consultant? Are you an advisor? Are you a moderator? What are you doing? I'm like, okay, I need something to explain it. And now it's 134 episodes, and still it becomes more and more complex with every episode.
A simple deck of cards can be a brilliant way to engage a group. You can use them to stimulate thought, inject energy, or spark lively conversations. But how can you use cards when you're facilitating virtually? Deckhive.com is a brand new platform that enables you to use cards on screen just as you would face-to-face. Invite people to a shared real-time session and then let them select, move and flip cards over. Our growing library includes many popular card decks, including picture cards, strengths cards, emotion cards, and more. But if we don't have what you need, you can even create your own deck really easily. Use the code WORKSHOPSWORK when you subscribe to a paid monthly plan, and you'll get the first month completely free. Go to deckhive.com and give it a try.
From your experience, what makes a workshop fail?
How many points do you want to hear from me? I think I have top 3.
Okay.
And the first one, the top one, actually is it creates an illusion of knowledge.
What do you mean by that?
Very often I hear from people, oh, we had a workshop and this was really nice and we had a great idea. And so we were well together and everything was nice and we had a cool result, but we never used it. Then we get back to our real life. And it was just in the environment of the workshop that we have created something that we at this point of time thought is really great, but it wasn't useful in the end. I mean, maybe that's where a workshop fails. I think so. This connection, and maybe that's also a reason why I focus on this consulting and really to understand what's needed for people and also who needs to be in the room. And so it makes the preparation so important. And also but maybe that's my special, is the decomposition of any management method and stuff you use so that people can really use the results afterwards.
So for you then to avoid this illusion of results is to really add this consulting and component or guidance.
The illusion of knowledge. So people think they know.
Yeah. But then they don't apply it. So how do you avoid that happening in a workshop?
What I try is this decomposition of methods in the way of, for example, if you have a SWOT analysis or something like that, there is so much misunderstanding built in because of the language it uses, that we just know that this needs to be done and help people by changing the language that comes with the method in simple questions so that they really can share their knowledge and build it in the system. That's one thing. And the other thing, as you said, is the preparation, really trying to understand what is really needed. But I think that's not very special for a facilitator.
Yeah. So if I understand you correctly, it's basically not stopping too early almost in a workshop. Because if I understand you correctly, if everyone is happy with the outcome of a SWOT analysis, but actually they don't really understand what it means so that they can translate it then into actions that would happen after. So they're all happy, glory, so creative, so many ideas, check that box. Yeah. And then the next day they wake up and like, so what do I do now with that?
We have it in the photo minutes. It's buried there. And also what comes with it is the ownership of the results. So if they don't really own the result and they all need to agree, also one of my favorites, we have decided this together and without sometimes asking who really needs the decision and who needs to work with it. Sometimes it's easier to have a smaller, to find out who really needs to agree on something so that they can move on instead of trying to find a consensus in a big group of people who are somehow never involved in the implementation. But having the good feeling that they have decided it together.
Which is then
spending lots of energy.
Decision. So you have the illusion of results and the illusion of decision. And then the illusion of action, maybe, when nobody owns an action point. So
you do have the results and you do have the decision. I think what I mean with illusion of knowledge is that you just think everything would be clear, but it isn't.
Because we tend
not clear enough.
We tend to make assumptions instead of asking.
Yeah.
Similar is with the words, with the example you used. So who, according to you, who needs to be then the small group of people to take a decision? So those who need the decision, those who are affected, those who need to implement it?
It depends. I think all the people you mentioned should be involved in a good decision-making process because you need to know their perspective.
Mm-hmm.
But who needs to take the decision or make the decision, that needs to be like defined in the specific case. And I think it's the people who can be accountable for the decision. We actually we love to bring in a completely new role in the decision-making process, which is the owner of the decision.
Mm-hmm.
And the owner of a decision is a person who needs the decision to get somewhere where he wants to get. It could be by hierarchy, that whatever decision needs to be made for a project to start or for a change to be made. And this person needs to reflect who needs to make the decision so that the decision is reliable. So he needs to find people, or they need to find people who can make the decision so that they can trust this decision is solid and accepted. And it can be yourself. That's the first question you should ask yourself. Can I make that decision? Or do I need other people to decide together with me? Or do I need other people to make the decision and I'm not involved in the decision? And then you need to prepare the decision. And during the preparation of the decision, you need to find the people who are affected by the decision and people who have expertise. And they all need to be heard. But it doesn't necessarily mean that they all need to decide together. That's something you need to define in a specific, you should think about in a specific case. That's the invitation.
And there are two things that really catch my curiosity and attention. One is people must think whether they can just take the decision themselves. And what I hear is there's somehow maybe a reluctance to take decisions. And I would be curious to hear your experience with that, whether there's something like what is so difficult in making decisions? Why is it so difficult for us humans to take decisions?
I can't answer that question. So in general, why is it so? What I have seen in organizations, especially in organizations who work now more participatory, I have met people, project managers, for example. They said, now our bosses want us to make decisions, but I don't want to make that decision because I can't be accountable for that. I can't hold that alone. So, and it's about liberating those people so that they can choose and also think about it. Is it something I can decide on my own, or I just get advice from someone and then I do it? Or do I ask my boss or whatever person in a hierarchy to be safe? Because this person can be accountable. This person can carry the decision if it's a bigger decision. It's not about what paper do I need for my next workshop or stuff like that. It's really about bigger decisions that affect people in the organization.
So basically, is someone taking a decision must be someone who can also enforce it. Is this what you mean by being accountable?
Yeah, and if shit happens, they can stand there and say, yes, I took that decision.
Yeah, in the best of knowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I have the impression that one of common problems with decisions, and one of the big obstacles, is if a decision is made, usually by large groups, and then nobody does anything because nobody knows, or maybe they're taking the decision back. So these decisions where maybe the wording is not clear, where maybe the actions are not clear, or who actually is accountable. And then you have this written decision maybe by a management board, management committee. Okay, management committee has decided, and then nothing happens. Because in the past, maybe it was reverted or changed, or someone realized that they understood something different from that.
No.
And if I understand you correctly, all of this can be avoided by having one person who's owning the decision, who is the person.
And only, actually, we have 3 leadership roles. Mm-hmm. So we have a card set, which is called decision heads. And now I need to make up my mind to remember all the English names. So you have the owner, mm-hmm. you have the decision makers. It's just roles, a person can have different roles at the same time.
Different heads? Okay, different roles at the same time. Mm-hmm.
Synonym, yeah. And so it's the owner of the decision, the person who needs the decision and therefore takes ownership to initiate a decision-making process. And you have the decision makers, the people who make the decision and will be accountable for it afterwards. Then the owner also needs to think about a third role or head, which is the facilitator. In a more specific sense, we didn't find a better word. The facilitator of the decision-making process is responsible to design a good process in order to involve all the people who have expertise or who will implement the decision or execute the decision and will be affected by the decision. And it's also a very important leadership role. So the result of what the facilitator does is the decision paper, I think you call it in English. It's the result that was converged by the process, and the basis for the decision makers to make the decision. And they usually ask for the process. I think that's interesting. You have, at the one hand, the accountability of the people who make the decision. Mm-hmm. The other hand, you have the transparency of the process. Who was asked, who was involved in making the decision paper, so that people can trust that it's the best possible decision. And I think those are 2 very important roles. And the facilitator role is...
I can perfectly see that. And I guess the facilitator role then also includes the documentation of what information has been taken into account to take the decision.
Yeah, or what people have been involved. Yeah.
Fascinating.
And also to find out what the decision makers actually need to make a good decision.
Yeah,
the work of the facilitator goes in both directions. And at the one hand, to find out what they need. On the other hand, so who should be asked and how.
Yeah. It almost sounds like it's a new routine or muscle to be trained. So it sounds complex maybe, or like a big change initially. but once you understood it, and then it becomes kind of the routine of an organization to act like that, it really accelerates everything that comes after.
Oh, yeah, back to routines. Yes. I think we do have those decision routines in organizations. If you see it from a systemic perspective, you have decision routines. And sometimes they work. For routine decisions, they work. But if you have a bigger one, which it tends to just slip into the routines, and things like the decision heads card set, where you have all the roles and you can use that to reflect, like, is that decision routine really the right thing for this decision? So this is kind of breaks the pattern of this decision routine. If one person starts to take out the cards and to reflect, does that routine work, or do we need to leave and work beyond that routine and create a specific process?
So if I understand you correctly, depending on the decision or the scope of the decision or the project that needs a decision, you would need a different process, a different routine. So it's not one size fits all.
Yeah. And the roles should help you reflect what a good process may look like.
Because I would think that a reflection of who is affected by the decision, designing, facilitating a process, getting input, insights from everyone and aligning on the information is something that is necessary for every decision. Maybe sometimes it can be very fast because you don't need that much.
And especially if you need to have, like, if not a few people can just execute the decision, but if you need to involve many people to do that, the more important it is to have them on board so that you decide something which they can realize.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
True.
So especially you need to have
external stakeholders or legal aspects to take into consideration that usually don't play a role.
At this point, I would love to bring in the decision canvas. It's a canvas we have created for owners of decisions, people who want to start a decision process because they need a decision, to gain more clarity about their decision need, because this is what they need to explain to the decision makers and to the facilitators so that they understand what the decision is about, why it's needed, and what should not be decided.
What do you mean by that?
What needs to be decided and what should not be decided. Sometimes if you have a big decision, you maybe just want to have the general direction, but you don't want to have more in detail decisions because this is what you will decide during implementation on your own. But really playing this, what needs to be decided, what not, and how it will change the future and for whom are some questions of the decision canvas, which lead also to find people who need to wear the different hats, like the facilitator, the decision makers, the experts, the people who will realize it, and the people who will be affected of the decision. This is a thought process to gain more clarity about the decision need, and also for the owner itself, but also between the owner and the decision makers, so that they have a shared understanding what this decision is about.
I love it. And the aspect of having it clear what decisions not to take. After you explained it, it made so much sense because the devil lies in the details, right? And sometimes if we're asking, we just need one direction, but then if micromanagement is a result or decisions of that actually put so many constraints on the process afterwards, and it's very good to have permission to not decide certain things from the beginning to avoid misunderstandings later on.
Yeah. And it's also a leadership issue, or you can use it as leadership tool. Sometimes if a top manager, as it works for people who want to initiate something grassroots, and then need to have liberation and freedom to go, because like someone who is important and can be accountable for the decision can easily make that decision because it's transparent what they want to do. And on the other hand around, it's also for when I work with executives, they say, oh, I see that we have this decision need, so I initiate the decision for them to reflect. Are you really the owner of the decision? Are you the person who needs the decision? Because if you start the decision-making process, you take ownership for it. And if you take ownership higher in the hierarchy, you may take it from someone. And that's the thought process. That's what I do in my consulting work to help people reflect on who should be the owner.
And when you say you're taking away the ownership from someone else or the accountability, would the result then be stepping on someone's toes or micromanaging someone or building a bottleneck? Because it almost sounds like a change process. So the underlying assumption is that every decision results in a change, right?
Yeah, I think it's the art of finding out where ownership belongs for a leader in the hierarchy. And it's like taking space and making space for me. Mm. If you bring this a little bit in the applied improv and then facilitation language on stage, facilitators make space for others. People who give inputs, they take space, right? And so it is also in organizations. So if you have ownership and go in the lead, you may take space, like if you take ownership, and be aware if you really want to create that or initiate that, or if you take this ownership and take space, you take space from others. You can invite them to do that together with you. That's a different dynamic you create. And also you can just go to someone and say, I have seen that there you have this decision need. Don't you want to initiate something? But then step back and let them do it. And then you make space for them to take ownership and go for it.
I have this huge light bulb moment. Thank you. I've never looked at it like that in terms of taking space and making space. It's a beautiful metaphor. It makes so much sense.
We do work a lot with ownership, also for projects. So we say, for example, you don't need to start a project if there is no owner of the project, no person who really wants this project to happen and can tell you the purpose of the project. If you discuss this with many people, one should, we all should. It's nobody. You need to have persons who take ownership. It doesn't need to be one person. It can be 2 or 3.
Yeah.
But it needs to be people and not everyone.
Yeah. And again, so I have this issue with the word should. And I think this is a beautiful example. If it just should happen, it will never. So if nobody wants it to happen or thinks it will happen or has to happen, then should is not enough to actually realize a project. And so to come back to the ownership of decisions, and you said it must be, everyone must reflect on where the decision is linked to. So who's taking accountability? Is there kind of a rule of thumb? So what comes to my mind is the European system of subsidiarity. So the decision must be taken at the lowest level possible so that a person who is most in touch with the reality takes the decision. Is there something similar for organizations?
Well, I'm improvising. I don't know. I've never thought about this question. And I think it's a very interesting question, and it could be a good guideline. Like, if you feel that you can be accountable for the decision, just go for it. Maybe it's depending on the company culture as well. Mm. And on the size of the decision. But it's a very interesting question. I will actually watch it.
Yeah, because I think if a CEO is accountable for a decision that actually is so, how do you call it, in the daily business?
Yeah, there you have this gap. Then you create a bottleneck, or then you take also, yeah.
And
I think
CEO might not know everything that is implied.
Yeah. I hope that by introducing the owner of a decision beside the decision maker or before the decision maker, because if there is no decision need and no owner initiating a decision, no decision needs to be made.
Mm.
And the owner to reflect who should make the decision. Can I do it on my own, or do I need other people to decide it? And maybe that's the question. Maybe that's the first question. Can I make the decision, or do I need someone else?
And maybe whose endorsement do I need? Because then I would see the CEO as the person who is making space for others to own the decision and go ahead.
Yeah. So we have created some Creative Commons free of charge, colorful card games, and we invite everyone to just reflect their decision roles in their decision routines, just to make it better for them.
Awesome. And I'll put the links into the show notes so that the audience can find them with one click.
And the only thing we want back is we would dream of getting some feedback or stories, what you have learned. Those cards, that it comes with a new book we wrote in German, unfortunately, but they are available, or we have created them even after the book. And I think it's a great way to break management and especially their decision routines. And you find many more visual tools there to break project management routines.
I am very curious, and I'm sure that the audience is as well. And I assume then if they follow the link, they will also find the feedback form.
Well, we actually invite people to send us an email in order to get the password to download everything, because we want to have this human touch, and maybe also we are just curious who is using it. And
beautiful. So don't be shy, dear audience. Yes. Send an email to Karen to get access to the decision canvas. Wonderful. Now that we've talked for almost an hour, is there anything that you would like to share that we haven't touched upon yet?
It's too many things. And I assume facilitators are listening.
Yes.
Mostly to the podcast. Yeah, maybe I get back to the beginning. So I said, I don't call myself a facilitator in the first place when I speak with people who are not facilitators. And you said that we all have a journey to facilitation. And my invitation to you is, if you haven't done that yet, I've found that very helpful for me, is really to connect your superpowers from before facilitation, like deep understanding of a different profession with the facilitation. For me, it was this management. And for me, like my dream with Over the Fence kind of got through, that I could use facilitation beyond facilitating workshops in creating free tools or giving people some instructions at hand, where those who usually do not facilitate, like project managers or other people in organizations, that it gets easier for them to benefit from the power of facilitation by giving them simple tools that are easy to practice and to experiment with in small groups, so that we can just share the power of facilitation beyond the professional community of facilitators. That's something I enjoy very much, and maybe something
That's
else.
A beautiful invitation. And I think from a personal perspective, personal growth and professional growth, it's so valuable, because I think there's so much we have learned in our previous lives. And as you said, we have collected so many superpowers that we might not even be aware of how to use them for facilitation. And for instance, I interviewed Michael, and he shared what he has learned about facilitation from practicing as a massage therapist. Fascinating. The safe space. You can only provide the opportunity to heal, but you cannot heal. You cannot just jump into it, but you have to, sometimes it needs to hurt before it gets better. It's just a kind of feel-good massage. It doesn't help.
I have one thing I would like to share.
Yes, please.
I learned that from applied improv, from Berliner Raffi, actually. We all, as facilitators, we speak about those different zones in a meeting, like the divergent, then grown zone or growth zone, depending where you come from. You call it differently, and then the convergent zone. And in the applied improv, like a good story has beginning, middle, and end.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what I use to structure the meetings in the 3 phases. And this is what I give others as a guideline to structure the meetings. So that you do this divergent in the beginning. Do you have this middle? You need to have this middle. And we use a change of perspective or something simple to stay in the ground zone. And before you allow people to discuss as they usually do and just come to the end. So it's one of the examples to really pack some wisdom of process design in very easy to use.
Yeah. And if I hear correctly, I hear the implication or that very often one would tend to spend not enough time in the middle part.
It depends. Actually, I have experience in some leadership labs with many facilitators. They said, no, we want to stay there. And also our comfort zone to the duration of this grown zone grows when we facilitate a lot. And we forget how hard it is for other people to stay there just for a moment. And my invitation is just do it a little bit more than your intuition tells you to.
Mm-hmm.
For people from outside the facilitation domain, tell this.
Yeah, to grow comfort in this discomfort.
It's so hard that people are not used to listening, and even in universities with young students.
Maybe even worse. Attention span gets so short. And then we need another episode to talk about slow thinking.
But it's exactly it's exactly this, using this agenda. And maybe the manifesto, which is just a visual reminder to also an invitation to facilitation wisdom. If you look at it, it's not a surprise for facilitators. It's made for the others who are not there.
And then maybe a good tool for facilitators to communicate with those who don't speak our language.
I don't know. We need to find out.
Coming back full circle to the language issue.
Yeah, that would be nice, actually.
Wonderful. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Miriam. It's been a great pleasure. I'm so awake now. What shall I do now?
Start the next book.
Oh, yes, but this one will be in German.
Lucky me.
Yes.
Great. So I see you at the festival.
Oh, yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Thank you for staying tuned and listening to the show. I appreciate your attention as I know how busy you are. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and engage by sharing your comments and thoughts, and visit workshops.work to download the one-page summary. I'm looking forward to seeing you back at the next episode, and I wish you a fruitful day.